This is Bruce Schmidt,
And Brett Duncan.
and we're just going to give you a quick synopsis of Resolve to Read. So, Brett, what bumper sticker did you get out of today's lesson?
Let's see. I think the big bumper sticker that I got out of today's lesson is that sometimes when you're obedient to God, that means that you sometimes get the hill country.
Well, that's a great. No, Brett, that was really great. And instead of a soft life, you get, after you've been obedient to God and you've had challenge after challenge, all of a sudden you get handed a bigger challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's really good. Why? What does that mean? I mean, doesn't that seem kind of unfair to you?
Well, not really. I think that going back a little bit, if you look at Moses' life too, and you look at you look at Joshua and you look at Caleb as well, you're talking about like three guys who really, the big, I guess you could say the big kind of turning point in each of their lives comes when they're well past, what we consider middle age. And I think it's also it's encouraging to think about the fact that it's like if you went to, if we went to, our seniors in this church and said, well, most of you are still spring chickens in comparison to a lot of the patriarchs of when the patriarchs were called to do their
right.
greatest work. They're, a lot of these guys are 80 years old at this point, so it's really it's really fascinating. And I think it's really a cop-out if we say, I'm too old to do what God has asked me to do. And because...
we didn't talk about this during the lesson, but Brett, the whole society really focuses on youth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and youth is important. I mean, when you go through the scriptures, David was very young when he killed Goliath, I mean, there's lots of stories of youth. God uses youth,
Mm-hmm.
but we often forget that God also uses middle age and older men
Mm-hmm.
and women, through that. And I guess the bumper sticker there is, it doesn't matter where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
God's going to use you from age 2 to age 120.
Mm-hmm.
God has got a plan for you, and the scriptures are about wherever you're at being available to God.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point.
Well, and the key to all of that is obedience. I mean, you look at like Rahab from, looking back at last week, you look at Rahab, Rahab's a harlot, but she's obedient to God. And it's the only, she's the only one who's saved in Jericho. Her family is the only one that's saved in Jericho because of her obedience. And yet, here she is a harlot.
Do you think God revels in using what the world considers unusable?
Oh, I think so. It's like there was a quote that I heard this week from like A.W. Tozer that said we must be hurt deeply for God to use us greatly. Essentially, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that it says that really we have to be broken in order to be used.
Oswald Chambers talks about in his devotions that we must become broken bread and poured out wine.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of it, bread's already broken wheat. I mean, it's grinded and it's crushed and it's baked and it's, and then you take it and to eat it, you got to break it apart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what we want. Even in the Christian world, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know is that this idea of being broken sounds very good to me.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about giants in the land.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I have to fight? Well, I mean, there are giants right here, and I just want to leave them alone. Look, if they ain't hurting me, I ain't hurting them. Why can't we just live in peace, And the giants like pride, hatred, lust,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can I just keep them away? Why do I have to go after them? And I get knocked down 6 times out of 7.
Mm-hmm.
Honest to gosh, it happens. Why is it that I have to fight against these things? Why does God make me do that?
I think it reveals who He is through those things. I think that really, I think the thing that we miss the point of a lot, and I think the one thing that I think a large portion of the Old Testament is about, and sometimes we kind of have missed that point in our churches a lot of times, I think, is that we're called to obedience because God is so holy. And I think the idea, too, when you're kind of, as we've been going through the Old Testament, is you start thinking about, the Exodus, and you start thinking about what the Israelites were doing the fact that they're essentially delivered out of the land to go serve God. How much do we think about our own, salvation in Christ as being about freedom to serve? We think about it as grace, but we don't really think about it as our own freedom to serve God. That we're now free to do that because we've been redeemed.
If you look at American culture, and, if you look at movies in the last 40, 50 years, 100 years, however long you want to do it, one of the big themes that you get is the conqueror, and you kind of see, Sylvester Stallone in the, in the Rocky movies. I remember seeing a movie that put out on Walt Disney about the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was called, I forget what it was, but the name. But here's these storylines about a person who overcomes overwhelming odds, and just keeps on, is tenacious. And we as a society, and every society, I think, really honors that. There is something about a conqueror that you go, gee, what made him or her do that? What made Corrie Ted Boom last through Ravensbrück and become the godly woman she did? What kept Billy Graham going? What kept, and fill it in, from Mueller to, Tenney. Why did these men and women overcome? And when you find out, well, it's because of their faith in God, I tell so much about God. The giants are put there, I think, for a purpose, or they're allowed to be there. And the only way and what did we say was the only way we could kill giants? We said prayer. We said spiritual songs and hymns. We said be courageous. We also said that we need each other. I can't defeat the giants without your help. I can't do that. I need you. The emails you sent me, I pulled up one, 17 times, just knowing that out there was somebody who cared whether I stumbled or not. Just that one email. And, this last week was a terrible week, and yet I knew, even though I couldn't see or touch you, those few words said that there was a friend out there that was mattered. It really is. I thought today's lesson was beyond exciting.
Me too.
Well, should we close?
Yeah.
And what are we here to do?
Pump
You up.